Hi everyone, and welcome to the Millennial Revolt. Today we are going to be talking about Syria because this is something that I frequently talk about on my channel because it is extremely important to me. The propaganda war continues as this civil war continues. Today we have seen many people going on television beating the drumbeats of war. We've seen UN Ambassador Nikki saying Assad must go, picking up the theme from the Obama administration, from President Obama to David Cameron to Hillary Clinton, and so on and so forth. We even seen President Trump doing the same thing. Assad is a very, very bad man. We need to do something about this. We've seen the warmonger himself, John McCain, going on television advocating for war. So there's so much to talk about, there's so much to get into, so let's just jump right into it. Last week, Rex Tillerson, who is currently our Secretary of State, made a huge U-turn in U.S. foreign policy when he said the longer-term status of President Assad will be decided by the Syrian people, suggesting that the U.S. is no longer intent on removing the Syrian president, because that has been a common theme of the previous administration, President Obama's administration, whether it was UN Ambassador at the time, Susan Rice, when she was going on saying that Assad must go, when it was Secretary of State at the time, Hillary Clinton, or John Kerry, saying that Assad must go, or President Obama himself. That was the line that they all stuck to, saying Assad has to go, Assad has to go. Even our EU allies were saying the same thing. Federica Mogherini was saying the same thing. You had David Cameron at the time saying the same thing. It was a common theme with these people that Assad must go. Now, as soon as it seemed that the Trump administration was shifting its policy towards Syria, there was a sudden gas attack in the Syrian rebel-held area of Idlib, which killed at least 58 people. Now, Trump held a press conference with Jordan's King Abdullah II, where he called the suspected chemical weapons attack on civilians in Syria a terrible affront to humanity, and he hinted that a change in U.S. policy on Syria may be coming as a result. He said that he was moved by the reports of a deadly gas attack in Syria, saying that the Syrian leader, who has denied, which is Bashar al-Assad, has crossed a lot of lines for him. He said, "It crossed a lot of lines for me." He said, "When you kill innocent children, innocent babies, little babies with chemical gas that is so lethal that people were shocked to hear what gas it was, that crosses many lines beyond the red line. Many, many lines." I'm calling bullshit. I'm so sorry. I'm calling bullshit because this is the same playbook that has been happening over and over and over and over again. This is extremely reminiscent of what happened in 2013 when it was revealed that it was a false flag and the U.S. believed that it was Syrian President Bashar al-Assad who was gassing his own people, and that crossed the red line for President Obama, and they had to remove Assad. Then I'm so sorry, but it seems as if the march for war is continuing with these people, and Trump is falling for this hook, line, and sinker. Well, all of this is happening just hours after Steve Bannon was removed from the Security Council. Now, he is still in the Trump administration, and I am not a huge fan of Steve Bannon, but he is realistic about what is happening in the world and America's role, that we shouldn't be engaging in fucking regime change. Now, what this shows is President Trump shifting towards the neocon and the neoliberal posture, with reports saying that women and children had died in this attack, had a big impact on him, causing him to rethink his strategy. Trump declined to outline what his new approach to Syria might be, but it is very clear that he's picking up where President Obama left off and is launching a full-blown escalation into Syria, or worse, because we already know that the Kremlin not only defended President Assad earlier in the day, but it said that it would continue its military activity in Syria. So there's going to be a collision. And given the fact that we have this Russian hysteria that has enveloped one party and many people in the Republican Party, this is not good. This can only lead to war. We have never been closer to war than we are now. And one of the main reasons why I said I would support President Trump is because he had a realistic foreign policy. His foreign policy was trying to move away from regime change, move away from these unnecessary wars, this nation building that has been encompassing American foreign policy since the 90s. This is a problem. This is an issue. I am by no means a peacenik. I understand war is necessary, but it is a last resort to anything that we do. We have to stop doing this shit. And what gets me so mad is people don't seem to realize the game that is being played on them, the wool that is being pulled over people's eyes. These people do not change what they're doing. They do the same thing over and over and over again. You had President Bush pushing the Iraq war. You had CNN. You had Fox News. You had MSNBC all jumping along the bandwagon. You had the Washington Post. You had the New York Times, Judith Miller, pushing all of this. Nobody was arrested. Nobody was thrown in prison for getting us into a war. They kept going. If people don't remember that, you have what recently happened. Libya with Gaddafi. Same shit. Fox News pushing it. CNN pushing it. MSNBC pushing it. Our newspapers pushing this war. Pushing regime change. Nobody was arrested. Nobody went to jail. And they're doing the same shit with Syria. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. The people may have changed, but the script stays the same. And people really need to wake up and realize what the fuck is happening. What is going on? The main reason why I said, okay, I'll get behind Trump was because he had a realistic foreign policy. But what is the difference between him and Hillary Clinton? If you're pushing red lines bullshit, we need to do something. We're going to push for escalations. We're already breaking international law by being in this country bombing. What is the real end game here? To create another failed state like Libya? To create another failed state like Iraq? To create another failed state like Afghanistan with Syria? To partition the damn country? That is not our job. That is not our responsibility. That is not what our military should be used for. Our military is for the defense of the United States of America. We should not be engaging in regime change. We should not be engaging in staging color revolutions. We should not be arming militant Islamic groups like we have been doing since the 80s. This is not what our nation should be doing. This is not what our founding fathers had in mind. We are in a strategic location where we don't have to worry about these things. We are surrounded by two peaceful nations such as Canada and Mexico. We are not in a place where any of these people are going to attack us, but yet we keep going overseas and doing this shit and bombing these nations, destroying these nations, saying we're going to bring freedom and democracy to these people and create failed states, mass refugee crisis in the process. And nobody seems to pay attention to what the fuck is happening. It continues to happen. Year after year, administration after administration, whether it's neocons or neoliberals, the same shit keeps happening and people keep going on about their business like it's okay. It's not okay. We need to stop this shit. You have two nuclear powers, superpowers, backing opposing sides. How is that going to end well for anyone? The Russian military said in a statement that it did not conduct any airstrikes in Idlib governorate. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, the Syrian Air Force destroyed a warehouse in Idlib province where chemical weapons were being produced and stockpiled by rebels before being shipped to Islamic State in Iraq. The warehouse was used to produce and store shells containing toxic gas, Major General Igor Kontsevok said. Apologies if I butcher his last name. The same chemical munitions were used by militants in Aleppo, where Russian military expert took samples in late 2016, the Major General said. Just last week, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Nikki, signaled a quite different message, suggesting the Trump administration had taken its sights off of Assad, as I said. But because of what has happened now, Trump has said he has turned an about face. President Trump himself has criticized the Obama administration's intentions to intervene in Syria back in 2013, saying the rebels were just as bad as the current regime and the US should stay out. Now, President Trump has done a complete 180 and has reversed his position on Syria. Now, the Syrian military has released a statement saying, "We deny completely the use of any chemical or toxic material in Khan Shaykhun town today, and the army has not used nor will use in any place or time, neither in the past or future." The United Nations Security Council convened on April 5th in the United Nations headquarters in New York City to propose a draft resolution by the usual players, which were the US, the UK, and France, which would condemn Damascus for the reported chemical attacks in the town of Khan Shaykhun on Tuesday. Nikki Haley, who is currently our US ambassador, delivered an emotional speech which included pictures of images to try to argue in favor of swift action. She was using pictures of children. Now, these pictures were used in reporting of the alleged chemical attack. She discussed me as much as Susan Rice and Samantha Powers. She is a propagandist urging for war. She claimed the incident carried all the hallmarks of an attack by Damascus, adding that the toxins used in the alleged assault were more deadly than the previous cases attributed to the Syrian military by Washington, D.C. U.S. envoy to the UN accused Russia of failing to ensure that there were no chemical weapons in possession of the Syrian government. She said the truth is that Russia, Iran, and the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad have no interest in peace. Oh sure, because we've seen how well the U.S. interests of peace have worked in Iraq and Libya. The U.S. has hinted at taking its own action in Syria unless the United Nations Security Council moves to prevent the use of chemical weapons in the war-torn country. She said, "When the United Nations continuously fails in its duty to act collectively, there are times in life of states that we are compelled to take our own action." Now, Russia has criticized the draft resolution for being unbalanced and jumping to conclusions. It said the document would have to include several amendments, such as calling on the rebels-controlled areas to provide full access to UN investigators and setting an unbiased and comprehensive probe into the incident as the primary goal of the resolution. The draft was penned in haste and adopted. It would have been irresponsible. The Russian deputy acting envoy to the United Nations, Vladimir Sakov, said. He also blamed the Western members of the UNSC for unwillingness to investigate the previous cases of alleged use of chemical weapons in Syria, where rebel groups were accused of using toxin agents. Now, Safkov said that it was premature to adopt a separate Security Council resolution over the alleged chemical attacks in Idlib, as earlier adopted documents were sufficient to provide for its thorough investigation. The deputy envoy stressed that Moscow supports the calls voiced by the United Nations Security General Antonio Guterres for a full and objective probe of alleged chemical attacks. Now, Russia considers the use of chemical weapons by any of the warring parties in Syria to be unacceptable, adding that the perpetrators must be held responsible. What you have is a situation where it seems as if the U.S. is preparing for a bigger escalation in the war that's currently raging in Syria. And this chemical attack was the perfect excuse for them to use. Now, currently what you have is opposing sides, but each of these sides have their own goals. You have the U.S., Turkey, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, the EU, and the UK versus Syria, Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah. Now, as we know, the US has said that it's going to take out a couple of countries via General Wesley Clark when he said that we were going to take out Iraq, Syria, Somalia, Libya, Sudan, Iran, and Yemen. We're currently aiding Saudi Arabia in their illegal war in Yemen. We're bombing that country. They're on the verge of starvation. We have destroyed Libya. We destroyed Iraq. And we're currently working to destroy Syria as of right now. I think we are bombing in Somalia as well. So we're actually on the path that we said we were going to be in. Now, Turkey. Turkey has been encroaching in Iraq, and it's been encroaching in Syria. It's saying it's doing this to try to help, but we know Erdogan has his whole Neo-Ottoman empire that he wants to recreate, so he's taking lands from there, Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia wants to stop Iran's influence in the region because you have this Shia crescent going on. You have Iran, Iraq, thanks to the actions of the United States, which pushed them closer to Iran, and you have Lebanon via Hezbollah. Saudi Arabia controls a lot of the Gulf states. You have the EU and the UK, which basically follows along the dictates of the United States. Now, you have Syria and Russia. Russia and Syria has been allies for decades. So it's going to help them after Russia has seen what the United States have did in Iraq. They've seen what they did in Afghanistan. They've seen what they did in Libya. They weren't going to let it happen in Syria. Iran is also an ally of Syria, and Hezbollah is, people call them freedom fighters, other people call them terrorists. It's up to you to make your own judgments about them, but they are helping the SAA, which is the Syrian Arab Army. This is currently the state of what is happening in Syria right now, and this brings me back to my point that this chemical weapons attack was a false flag. If dead children are being paraded in front of cameras, it does not show a chemical weapon attack. It is proof of murder that someone massacred these children and their families. To claim there was a gas attack, you have to show photos and videos of the attack site, dead families in or outside their homes, dead animals, rescue workers breaking into houses and discovering the bodies. No one ever asked or answered these essential questions. When and where did the attack happen? How was the chemicals delivered? What neighborhoods were affected? Where was the wind blowing from? How were the victims taken to the place where they were first filmed? Who did the rescue work? Where were the white helmets and their camera crews when this happened? The white helmets did not exist in 2013. Today they are an Oscar-winning film crew with GoPro action cameras attached to their fucking helmets. They film each and every real and fake rescue operation because we do know and we have proof that they have staged some of the rescue operations that they take part in. So why was no video of the Khan Shikon rescue and the recovery work filmed? This is just another stage hoax, like the Ghouta chemical massacre of August of 2013. Hostages were kept in cellars and then gassed with chlorine when the time came to make propaganda videos and call for a no-fly zone. And there's another thing that has not been answered from the photos that have been released. Why are these rescue workers handling dead bodies, removing the victims, handling debris without protective equipment if there was a chemical gas attack that happened? That makes no sense. That is illogical. Anyone who is trained in rescue operations know that you always use protective equipment, but these people are using their bare hands. This is a false flag attack to get people more involved. And I will not support the Trump administration, and I don't support an escalation into the war. The neocons and the neoliberals are pushing for a war in Syria. And we have to be smarter and wiser to the game that is being played on all of us before we find ourselves in a situation none of us can control. I will have a link in the description to my previous videos about Syria, The Truth About Syria Part 1. I will also have a link in the description to the interview with Eva Bartlett exposing the propaganda about Syria. I will also have a link in the description to the World at War video that I made about the Ghouta chemical attack and the red lines and the propaganda about that. And I will also have links in the description to the previous Bashar al-Assad interviews that I have posted on my channel, so you can get the full picture and you can listen to what he's saying without the Western propaganda that is being fed to us. I'm the Millennial Revolt. Thank you guys so much for watching, and you have a wonderful day. Bye.